Hi, Elizabeth. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, thanks for all your help in putting this great agenda together. Um, Elizabeth is a member of Greater Houston Cybersecurity since its inception, but former Chief Privacy Officer of the Texas state government and currently a partner at Michael and Best. Elizabeth brings a unique and informed perspective to privacy and cybersecurity law practice. Elizabeth, thank you for having us. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Phill. Good morning, everyone. And first of all, happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It is so fantastic that we had such an exciting kickoff with Representative Capriglione. And I would otherwise say there's no encore. However, I have the privilege and the honor of introducing the director of the Department of Information Resources. Mandy is an attorney and a business leader, and we met almost 21 years ago when at the time I was ethics advisor and employment law advisor at the Office of Attorney General. Mandy started as an entry-level attorney at that agency and ended up being elevated all the way up to Deputy Attorney General for Administration and General Counsel for the entire Office of Attorney General before she became appointed as our current Executive Director of the DIR. In that role, Mandy is in charge of the overall direction of the DIR, which has, by the way, an annual budget of $4 billion. Because of Mandy's innovative solutions and her sound leadership, she has already distinguished herself as one of the most influential thought leaders in this space of the 21st century. I'm so proud to introduce you, Mandy, and I ask all of you to please join me in welcoming Mandy and her remarks this morning about the state of cybersecurity preparedness and resources for the state of Texas. Welcome, Mandy.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and it's great to see you. It's I do think we should note that both of us were 15, 18 started together.
I forgot to mention that.
I know, right? Yeah, it was a child labor internship program. Anyway, thank you. I'm
You're welcome.
Here. I'm really glad to be here and with all of you. And as Elizabeth said, on Cybersecurity Awareness Month, what a time to be together and to be able to share what we know about cybersecurity. So I was asked to come to y'all today to talk a little bit about state and local cybersecurity needs. And I have a presentation that I'm going to put up here. If you will give me one moment. And we're off. So I wanted to talk a little bit and kind of set the stage. And I know Representative Capriglione referenced this a little bit in his remarks, but this was an event, I think, for us here in Texas that certainly set the stage for where we are now in cybersecurity. And the steps that we took. So back in August of 2019, there was a ransomware event that hit, ultimately, this says 22, but 23 local governments throughout the state of Texas. And this event, to kind of paint a picture for you. So it was a Friday morning in August, hot as it normally is here in Texas. And it was an ordinary day. And then we received a call at our office that at first an entity had been hit, a local government. And then soon the number had gone up to 2, then 8, then ultimately to 23. And when this happened, this obviously caused us here at the Department of Information Resources. We jumped into action when we learned that one of the entities, that their SCADA system at the water utility had been impacted. I reached out to the governor's office, and by noon that day, Governor Abbott had activated the Texas Division of Emergency Management's State Operations Center This is the same operations center that responds to floods, hurricanes, pandemics. And Governor Abbott activated that operations center to a level 2 disaster declaration. And we were there. So really within a matter of hours, we went from the first phone call to having the responders together within the state operations center to begin assessing and triaging on this event. So we had state partners, federal partners, we all gathered together at the SOC. Soon by Saturday, and now we're on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week rotation for a level 2 disaster. We had our incident responders identify and prioritize all the sites by noon. By Sunday, we had incident responders visiting all those sites, which was a challenge because, as y'all know, Texas is a big state. And so getting folks up to the Panhandle, to West Texas, to Northeast Texas from where we were based out here in Austin, that was a challenge. And then the rest of the week, we worked that incident. We worked with the government entities, and we're happy to say that by Friday, so a week from the day when this event started, that all of the sites were remediated to the point that state support was no longer required. So how did this happen? As you all know, I mean, many of you are cybersecurity practitioners, so you're familiar with this area. Some of you may be business owners or government officials. So what was it that made this event so particularly successful? And it was one event that made certainly national and international news. Never thought that my agency and something we'd be responded to would make the headline on Drudge Report. It's not really a goal of mine, but it happened because this was the importance and the significance of this event. But it also got the attention of the United States Senate. I was asked to go to the United States Senate to testify in front of the Homeland Security Committee about the success of this event, of our response, how Texas responded, and what made us so successful. And I think the key here is preparation. So we had back in 2019, Senate Bill 64 was passed, which added the cybersecurity event to the definition of a disaster. So therefore, that's what allowed, when the governor declared it a disaster, for us to activate the State Operations Center and to have the Texas National Guard be able to assist with defending state cyber operations. We also had a lot of preparation because there's a cybersecurity annex to the Texas Division of Emergency Management's incident response plan. That came about in 2017 and asked for my agency, the Department of Information Resources, to create this statewide cybersecurity incident response plan in partnership with the Division of Emergency Management, with the Department of Public Safety, and with the Texas Military Department. And then once we had that plan, we held tabletop exercises and incident exercises with our partners to make sure we knew what to do when such an event happened. And as y'all know, with anything in life, but particularly in cybersecurity, this is a team sport. And so we had to form partnerships for incident response with our partners, which included the Texas Military Department, Division of Emergency Management, the Texas A&M University System, which the Division of Emergency Management is a part of the A&M system. Of course, DPS, FBI, DHS, CISA, and our private sector partners were absolutely instrumental in our success in that 2019 event, and other state and federal partners. The other thing we have as far as preparation, and Representative Capriglione referenced this a little bit, is one of the things that we offer through the Department of Information Resources is we have shared technology services. And one of those services is a managed security services contract. And this is a contract, it's pre-negotiated, it's security services on retainer that local governments, state governments, higher ed can all use for incident response. And you can enter into this contract and this agreement with no retainer fee and just have that contract ready to go should you have an incident that comes about. You can also, of course, use this contract to prepare so that you don't have an incident, so that you would have, maybe it's pen tests or security assessments or a variety of other things that you might need in order to prepare for a security event. So with that in mind, and I talk about that particular event, a little bit more about it. There was recently, the AP did a story on that cyber event, which we were glad to work with them on because we want to spread the word. We want to get the awareness out there about what it is that any entity, but particularly government entities who are entrusted with our constituents' data, what we need to do in order to become more secure. So we were thrilled that the AP did this story. And what came about there was this was a case of lacking cyber hygiene practices, and a variety of things that I'm going to outline here that existed during that event, and that won't be a surprise, certainly to the practitioners in the room, that these are the causes. But despite the fact that they may seem like common sense, these are the things we're seeing, particularly at the local government level. So one is a lack of knowledge of IT assets. So many times local governments are contracting with third-party service providers to build out their IT infrastructure. IT workforce is a challenge. It's a challenge in the private sector, and it is really a challenge in the public sector as well. So a lot of times we rely on our private sector partners to provide vital IT services. So that means that the business leaders and the deciders in government don't always know what assets they have. That was one of the things and the challenges we saw in that 2019 event, is we needed to get face-to-face contact, boots on the ground to each of these entities, because when we were talking to them about on the phone about what was hit, what did they have, let's talk about your servers, your networks, your services, your applications, the folks we were talking to on the phone, they really had no idea. And so this is key, of course, is making sure that local governments, they need to know what's on the network. Making sure that network is segmented was a key part of what happened in the 2019 event. Is the criminals were able to get in through one area and then quickly transition and spread throughout the network. Folks don't even know where their systems run, where their servers are, where the servers are actually located. I mean, a lot of times, some things as basic as that, local governments are just not prepared on some of these issues. And of course, then also on backups, where are those backups located? That inventory of services. So again, going back to the idea that we have heavy reliance on the IT service providers and our IT teams, but they're usually not the business experts, right? They're not the experts in running the program areas. So this is key, that, how do the constituents interact with their governments? We had folks saying, wow, I didn't know that application was used that much. And think about the critical impact when we're talking about public safety applications. So you have, law enforcement, the ability to record dash cam videos, the ability to record body cam videos, which are all saved digitally. Then you have the whole IoT issue with traffic lights and drawbridges and all sorts of things like that. Billing applications, the basic ways that most of us interact with government is at the local level. When we go to our public water system to pay our bill, or we need, vital records and things like that are held in our counties. All of those sorts of systems are the things that really impact Texans every day. And it's that inventory of services and knowing what could be impacted and how can you move to a manual process in the event of a cyber incident. Those are things that we saw that were truly lacking in that event. And of course, an inventory of data. And I think that, no conversation about cybersecurity can really be had if you're not also talking about data. And I was thrilled to see that there are a lot of great discussions coming up later on today on the agenda around these issues as well. So you need to, obviously we know that the local governments and state governments as well. I mean, this is data management practices are things that we should have been looking at for a long time. And unfortunately, it was not always something where the emphasis was placed. So looking at whether or not you have PII, is there, CGIS type information, criminal history information, HIPAA information, billing information, other regulated data, knowing what data you have. And then in the event of a cybersecurity event, who do you have to notify? this was something we saw where local governments in particular didn't understand, not only what were the legal requirements for notification, but what about the business requirements? Who did they have to notify within their organizational structure when things like this happen? And of course, backups. As practitioners know, this is really a critical piece to being able to be prepared and be able to respond to an event. But we saw, here that, well, one, there wasn't a good sense of backups. There wasn't a good backup strategy overall throughout the local governments. Backups weren't segmented. They weren't tested and usable, and they weren't offline. And so all of those things, of course, led to the event being certainly more challenging when it came to responding to the event. Administration, and this was one of the things that really came in play in the 2019 event, is all about remote access, and making sure that remote access, when it's accessible to the internet, that we have VPN, remote desktop protocol, SSH, the type of basic cyber hygiene tools that would be used, and of course, and the really having strong passwords, changing passwords, administrators who were using privileged accounts just for regular, ordinary work. All of those things came into play. And I think so much of this also comes down to education and training and awareness, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on. But as we all know, that is really key to being able to combat these issues. So, third-party providers. I want to talk a little bit about this. In the 2019 incident, the attackers were able to come in via the managed services provider that these entities were using. That MSP cooperated tremendously with us, was a partner in responding to the event, and was really, they really did work hard to try to make this better for the entities that were impacted. And they're a great way, our third-party partners are a great way to provide support. But, I think like in this circumstance, they had been doing work for these folks for so long that they really felt like family. And maybe those questions weren't asked by local governments, because a lot of times they don't know the questions to ask. So I think, as a community, that, IT leaders and cyber leaders need to make sure that we are spreading the word and communicating the message about the importance of security, and making sure that the contracts have strong cybersecurity and liability protections. This is a key missing piece that we see in so many different contracts for IT services in state and local government. And one thing that we'll offer, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when I talk about legislation, is that at the Department of Information Resources, in addition to our shared technology services program that local governments and state governments can use, we have a cooperative contracts program where we offer almost 1,000 contracts for IT goods and services that government at all levels in Texas and other states can utilize. And those contracts have strong cybersecurity and liability terms and conditions. And so what we're trying to do is press the easy button, but also the secure button. We want to help out local governments so that they make sure that those contractual provisions are there, that these are vendors who have been vetted, they've passed different security terms. And as we'll talk later, we're going to talk a little bit about cloud service providers and this, what we're calling a text ramp certification that's now going to be required here in Texas starting January 1. And I guess all of this comes down to lack of planning. And this is what we see so often in the local governments, is that there just wasn't a plan. Whether there just wasn't enough time, they didn't know where to start. This wasn't even on the radar. And, we need to know that, planning and everything is so critical. Of course, experience is no substitute for having a plan. And we know that, and this is something that we've certainly seen anecdotally with the entities that we've helped, is that even if you've been hit before, but you didn't have a plan in place, and then you get hit again, that experience is not going to help you out as much as folks who had that plan. And we've seen that the planning, coordination, tabletop exercises, all of that makes such a difference. And I think the key thing overwhelmingly that I would say that we see in local governments and state government as well is a lack of cyberware culture. We're getting there. We're changing some of that culture. The conferences such as this are huge, and a lot of the different efforts that are going on throughout state government. It's really helping. But we have to remember that cyberware culture starts at the top, and it sets the expectation for the entire organization. As I said earlier, cybersecurity is a team sport. So this is part of the business leaders have to understand cybersecurity and the operational risks, the reputational risks, the financial risks that come with not being prepared. And I think as a community, the IT community, the cybersecurity community needs to communicate all of those risks to leadership so that we're all on the same page and we can all work on this together. And I'd say another key thing is, of course, that cybersecurity training for all. And we know that thanks to Representative Capriglione and Senator Paxton, we had cybersecurity training that was required, not this session, but the previous session, for all government employees throughout Texas. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the changes that happened this last session to even strengthen those training requirements. One last thing is just talking about moving forward after an incident. We have seen entities that get hit multiple times because they didn't fix the underlying issue. This can also get into the talk about whether or not you pay a ransom. I'd like to point out that in the 2019 incident, no ransom was paid. And once you calculated the cost of recovery for those entities, it was significantly less than the ransom that was demanded. So having a strong plan, having the cooperation of state, federal, and private sector partners really enabled us to be able to respond to that event at a lower cost than we would have paid had we decided to pay that ransom. So again, when you have entities that pay the ransom, they're not fixing anything. They're leaving the vulnerabilities. We see that a lot. And we see folks who don't go back. Once they get their systems back, they don't then do the investment in making sure that the way the bad guys got in has been shored up, and continuously updating that plan. And I think the other thing, and this is a cultural thing that we have to change, is the blame game. It is very easy when these things happen to want to assign blame. But at the end of the day, these are crimes, and these are victims, and we need to stop blaming and just move forward. We need to fix what's wrong. We need to prepare for the future, and we need to move forward stronger than we were before. So I've talked a little bit about how my agency, DIR, can help state and local government. So a little bit about what we do in the security space. So DIR is home to the State of Texas Chief Information Security Officer, Nancy Rainasek. Nancy is a career IT and security professional. Nancy was recently recognized, I'm very, very proud of her, by the National Association of State CIOs as the Cybersecurity Leader of the Year. And that comes in part from all of the great things that she's led here at Texas to strengthen the cybersecurity posture of the state at all levels. And through Nancy's office and the OCISO, they provide strategy, leadership, policy, direction. We do education, awareness, reporting, and then statewide initiatives. And including in that is that incident response aspect. That was Nancy's team that responded in the 2019 event. And I would like to also point out that most of those are at no cost to entities. And then we do cybersecurity coordination. So the Texas Cybersecurity Council is led by DIR, and this is a partnership with the private sector, public entities, both at the state level, city level, and institutes of higher education. And the council works together on cybersecurity issues and is charged with making recommendations to the legislature prior to every legislative session on ways that the legislature can strengthen the state laws to help improve our cybersecurity posture. And then from an operations standpoint, DIR, my agency, runs the Network Security Operations Center, or NSOC. And there we serve as the internet service provider for state of Texas agencies, and we provide monitoring, intrusion prevention, alerting, incident response, threat analysis for all of our state agency customers. I'm sure it's no surprise that the state of Texas networks are a high target for those who would want to cause disruption to the state. And so we block upwards of 1 billion attempts a day. It's a lot of work. They're always on call, but my team does a great job in protecting our state networks. And then we have a variety of offerings. Some of those that I've talked about, these are just through some of the things that are available to local government, state government, and higher education in order to provide as much as we can in the area of cybersecurity to help strengthen what we really think a whole of state approach is the best way to tackle these. We can't fight all these individual battles. We've got to come at it with a whole of state approach. And that's obviously local, state, higher ed, and the private sector all working together. We also have, and we were charged by statute to create the Texas ISAO, the Information Sharing and Analysis Organization. And this entity is available to all Texas operations of public, private, and nonprofit entities, and it's at no cost. If you're interested in signing up, and I saw maybe some questions earlier, I know that that y'all have an ISAO as well. Well, we would love to partner with y'all. Feel free to reach out anyone on the call and go to the isao.texas.gov to learn more about it and consider joining this organization so we can help, again, protect the whole of the state. So I want to talk a little bit about how the state responded, and I know that some of this was covered in the previous remarks, but I really want to dive in a little bit in case there's questions about the specifics of what we're doing in these areas. So one, and really the biggest, is Senate Bill 475. And this is a bill that's gotten a tremendous amount of attention nationally. And not just within the state. And because it really is a comprehensive cybersecurity and data management bill that goes to address some of those critical weaknesses and provide some really innovative solutions to address those issues. So one of those is the Texas Risk Authorization and Management Program, or what we've called TexRAMP. So many of y'all are familiar with the FedRAMP that provides assurances and certifications for a variety of products. And then State Ramp, well, we now have TexRAMP. And the idea behind TexRAMP is that for those cloud services and cloud products that are offered and that are for state agencies, this is not for local government, it's state agencies and institutes of higher education. If you do not have a State Ramp or FedRAMP certification, you're going to need a TexRAMP certification. My agency was charged with establishing the rules and the certification requirements. I'd like to say that this bill was effective immediately, and it's a really big bill. And so we've been, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's what we're doing. And we're going through this and trying to get prioritized to get these things rolled out. Any state agency that's going to renew or enter into a contract for cloud products or services must have either the TexRAMP, State Ramp, or FedRAMP certification by January 1 of 2022. So this is our priority right now. This goes through the rule process. The rules actually go to our board next Thursday. They've been posted for notice and comment already. We've been having a lot of discussion. And the key thing here is we're looking at the types of data that will be accessed or within those cloud services or products. That's going to be key to provide the level of certification. And then we are only requiring our cloud vendors to meet the same security requirements that we require of our state agencies. So Texans data, Texans deserve no less. We're going to make sure that that is protected. I'd also like to note that the TexRamp will be at no charge. Unlike some of the other certification programs, you will not be required to pay for a TexRamp certification. We also have created the State Agency Data Management Board, and requires any agency of a certain size, I believe it's, I'm going to draw a blank, it's either 100 or 150, I think. Any state agency of more than 150 employees must have a designated data management officer. The bill also created the Texas Volunteer Incident Response Team. This is an idea that was born out of the 2019 event, where we had overwhelming response from the private sector wanting to help, wanting to be part of Team Texas to help us respond to this this massive event. And you know, for contractual reasons, for liability reasons, for a variety of reasons, we weren't able to take a lot of those folks up on their offer. We were able, with the resources that we had, to be able to respond to this event of 23. But what if it had been 50, 100, 200? How would we have done that? And so this gives us this volunteer cyber militia, similar to what some other states have done. This gives us that bench strength to really be able to partner with Texans who want to participate and to help out government when they're impacted by an event. It also creates regional cybersecurity working groups, which actually the private sector can be a part of. So private sector entities can also be a part of. And we're thrilled that these working groups are going to be created. This is also something that we're charged with setting up the framework with. As I mentioned earlier, we're prioritizing how we're rolling out this plan. So we anticipate that we'll have more around the working groups later this year or early next year as we talk about building out that part of Senate Bill 475. And a really exciting endeavor that we're charged with going forward with under SB 475 is creating a regional security operations center with a to-be-determined public university here in Texas. Goes back again to the 2019 event. As I mentioned, and y'all know, Texas is a big state. And having boots on the ground throughout the state, ideally located at universities, would be tremendous in being able to respond to an event, would be able to provide that underlying network infrastructures for local governments who choose to use that, would be there for education and outreach, for incident response, and so importantly, it's going to be a training ground to utilize students at those universities to help train up our next generation of cyber warriors. So we're really excited about that particular aspect as well. We're starting to have conversations with the various universities and hope to have that determination on where we're going to start with that later this year or early next year. Another bill, HB 1118, and this is goes back to cybersecurity training. And the key here is it's putting teeth to that cybersecurity training requirement that I mentioned earlier. Mandatory cybersecurity training for all public employees in Texas. Now, this requires local governments to submit certification of the cybersecurity training completion when applying for the Governor's Division of Criminal Justice grants. And that they would have to, if your employees have not taken this training, they're going to have to pay back those grants and make them ineligible for additional grants. So we're really trying to reinforce, this is a clear message from state leadership, that cybersecurity is important and training is important for all levels of employees. HB 1576 created a work group on blockchain manners for the state of Texas. And this is a legislative working group to start talking about blockchain policy as an emerging technology and something that we can really use to help keep Texans' data more secure. House Bill 4018, this is generating a lot of buzz, not just in the state, but throughout the nation. I'm very active in the state CIO community across the country, and other states are really looking to Texas here to see what we do with this fund, how it works, and the efforts or the achievements that can be made by using this funding. So I'm really grateful to Representative Capriglione and Senator Nelson for their leadership here in this committee. Also, Senate Bill 851 added the Texas Secretary of State to the Texas Cybersecurity Council, which I think is great and helps to certainly add that visibility into election security as well. We also have SB 1696 that requires the Texas Education Agency and DIR to establish a system to share anonymous cybersecurity incidents among schools in the state. Again, going back to if you see something, say something, and we know that information sharing, that timely information sharing is so critical to being able to respond and prevent future events. So we're excited about that. So those are all the policies, which are great, and the new laws that came about and how the state is responding. But let's talk a little bit about the funding. So there was a lot of cybersecurity funding in the 87th regular session, about $100 million in funding for cybersecurity projects, including $15.7 million for endpoint detection and response technology for state agencies. So this allows my agency DIR to purchase EDR and implement it at no cost for participating state agencies. So this is a huge, huge step in being able to protect those state agency endpoints and ultimately Texans' data. It also appropriated $6.9 million for the Regional Security Operations Center pilot that I talked about at one of the universities. So that was great, and that's just during the regular session. But as y'all know, there have been a few special sessions. So during the second called session, there were additional cybersecurity funding items, including more money for endpoint detection and response. So that would fully fund the EDR efforts for state agency endpoints, the fully funding the Regional Security Operations Center at the university, and continuing funding for multi-factor authentication, which is available to no cost for state agency network or state agencies as well. So these are all, again, it's a clear message from state leadership that cybersecurity is a priority that they're willing to invest in.
Mandy, I just want to do a quick time check with us. I want to leave a few minutes for questions.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely. So happy to take those questions. I didn't
want to cut you off, but just
no, it's my last slide. So you're
beautiful.
Fine. So it worked out perfectly. We've got $200 million for federal funding for that technology improvement and modernization fund that was just approved by both houses, and we'll wait to see what happens with that as well. But I am happy to take questions.
Thanks so much, Amanda. I mean, super informative, the work that you're doing and the resources that are available for DIR. I'm not going to ask my questions, but there was a question from Tony Quattro, which I think but working with cities over the years, it seems like a lack of budget is always an issue. What agencies in Texas can you refer them to help shore up those deficiencies?
Sure. So, well, one, I would say when you have limited budgets, $200 million for federal funding for that technology improvement and modernization fund that was just approved by both houses, and we'll wait to see what happens with that as well. But I am happy to take questions.
Thanks so much, Amanda. I mean, super informative, the work that you're doing and the resources that are available for DIR. I'm not going to ask my questions, but there was a question from Tony Quattro, which I think but working with cities over the years, it seems like a lack of budget is always an issue. What agencies in Texas can you refer them to help shore up those deficiencies?
Sure. So, well, one, I would say when you have limited budgets, I would recommend that they reach out to us here for the contracts that we have and the services that we provide, because we've been able to. I mean, when you're the 9th largest economy in the world, you can negotiate some pretty good pricing, and so we've got some great pricing that we can do, and there are a lot of free services. The other thing is with the federal funds that are coming down certainly through ARPA, and then more importantly through the Infrastructure Act that's coming later. I think there are a lot of opportunities there for local governments. I have some concerns around making sure that local governments get what they need and not just the latest, greatest, shiny thing that may be more than what they actually need. So we're going to do some efforts around there to help on that education piece for local governments.
That's great. Thanks. Though there was a question from several people about a copy of the slides. We will be posting those on the website, so everyone can have access to them on the Houston.org. From Andre Bruce, I'm curious why Texas is not already using a developed certification for cloud services like CSA Star.
So we are using, as I mentioned, obviously FedRAMP and State RAMP and some other states. I know Arizona's RAMP program as well. You know, this is a mandate from the legislature, and this was an importance that they saw. Part of it is this Tex RAMP idea, and you know, we're looking at all certification programs, and if they meet the standards that we have, then we'll give them. They'll work in Texas as well. But the key here is that some folks who maybe don't play in other state space or in the FedRAMP space, they wouldn't have that certification. This fills the gap by giving the Tex RAMP.
No, that's great. I'll keep an eye on if there's any other questions. I was also, you know, really encouraged by the contractual piece that you have. You know, doing the third-party contract is so important. You're right to have those in place, but trying to build it, especially as a small business, you know, again, I am myself. We're tiny, not for profit. It's hard to be able to do that with. There's resources like you're providing. It's great for small businesses to be able to leverage that.
Well, and I would say that too, even any small businesses, our contracts are posted on our website. They're open, they're available. Go and download them. Download them, borrow the language. It's out there for you to use. And if whatever we can do to help everybody, small businesses and governments, we're here to do that.
Great, thanks. Question from Sujit. Are there resources roadmap available for other states to use?
Yes, we do. We have resources on our website. We have our incident response red book, and we share a lot of information within the state CISO community and the state CIO community as well. So there's things we put out on the website for anybody, and then there's other things that we would just share internally for those responders. But we do, and if you know folks in other states that are interested, have them reach out to us. We are glad to help.
That's perfect. Mandy, we're out of time. Awesome presentation, super helpful. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for doing this, and hope we can have you back.
I'd love to come back. Thank you, Phill. I really appreciate it. This was great. Thank you all. I appreciate your questions.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Amanda.